We've got a lens video today, and we're going to be taking a look at this 35mm f2 APO-Lanthar from Voigtlander. This is an M-mount lens that I've been borrowing from today's sponsor, KEH Camera. I've had it for a few weeks. I've taken it out, tried it out for a little bit, just using it as my kind of day-to-day lens. And we're going to take a look at some of the things I like about the lens, don't like, and of course the image quality. Out of the many M-mount lenses I've tried over the years, a large amount of them have been 35mm f2 lenses. So this one here caught my attention. I wanted to see how it compared and stacked up against the 35mm Summicron, which has been a personal favorite lens of mine for a really long time. And for the price of this lens in comparison to the 35mm Summicron lenses, just based on image quality alone, this lens can definitely keep up, and you're going to save a good chunk of change doing that. Buying this lens secondhand right now from KEH, it ranges anywhere from around $817 US to $914 US, and that's secondhand. If you buy it brand new, this lens retails for $1149. As I mentioned, it's an f2 lens, and that ranges all the way to f16 with half-stop clicks in between. With the name APO-Lanthar, that's referring to this apochromatic design in the lens, and I'm not a lens designer. I certainly don't pretend to be an expert on lens designs, but based on everything I've read, one of the main benefits you get with an apochromatic design is you're going to see less color fringing and chromatic aberrations. You have a 12-blade aperture, a 49mm filter thread, and a nice bonus with this lens is the fact that with the rangefinder, you're going to be able to focus from infinity up to 0.7 meters, but past that, you can actually focus closer up to 0.5 meters. Of course, that isn't going to be rangefinder coupled. That's going to stop at 0.7 meters like most rangefinder lenses on the M-mount system. But if you're using a digital camera like this M11 right here, you can use live view or an attached EVF. Or if you wanted to use that for film, you just have to basically set it by the distance on the lens and just kind of know the distance that you're shooting. The lens is really well built. It's nice and solid. It is a little heavy, and it's also a little bit front heavy on this camera. If I set it down on the table, it's going to tilt forward, and that's due to not only the weight, but also the size of this lens. It's not a massive lens by any means. It's a rangefinder lens for the M mount, so it's going to be a lot smaller than if this were like an SLR lens or something, but it is still kind of long for an M mount lens, at least a 35 f2. In comparison to my Summicron, with the hood attached, it's still smaller than this lens with no lens hood attached. Using this lens in a number of different kind of scenarios over the last few weeks, the image quality has been amazing. Even on the M11, using the full 60 megapixels that are available here, it handles that resolution no problem. Throughout the entire aperture range from f2 and on, it's been very, very sharp. The apochromatic design goes a long way in doing what it's designed to do. Using it in really high contrast situations where you would see a lot of chromatic aberration, you know, bright snow and bare tree branches as we have here in Ohio right now, I wouldn't say it completely eliminates chromatic aberration or any color fringing. You're still going to see that in some really severe situations like I was shooting. But, you know, with Lightroom or most of these editing softwares these days, it's not that hard to remove chromatic aberration, so I wouldn't say it completely eliminates it based on the design, but it does a really good job. Having that additional functionality of being able to focus a little bit closer than a typical M-mount lens, that is nice. However, that does bring me to one of the first things I'm not crazy about this lens, and that's that there's no click or resistance at all. When you get from 0.7 meters and you focus closer than that, nothing about the way the lens feels is going to tell you that now you're in that close focus range. On other lenses that have that close focus feature, like the 35 Summilux I had, that lens has a little bit of resistance that lets you know once you get into that close focus range. It just gives you a little bit of peace of mind, so you know if you are using the rangefinder that you're past that and you need to stay within the actual rangefinder coupling. This lens doesn't have that, but of course the Summilux, it's a different lens altogether. It's an f1.4, it's not an APO design, and it's also way more expensive than this lens is. And speaking of focusing, there is no focus tab on this lens like you see on a lot of rangefinder lenses. It has this nice like knurled kind of grip around the focusing ring, but it doesn't have the tab, and that's something I really prefer on a rangefinder lens, specifically because it's really easy to just focus with one finger right here on the bottom of the lens, and nothing gets like up here in the way of the rangefinder. I've found that if I'm using this lens, especially if I'm holding it in portrait orientation, no matter which way, I kind of have to remember to keep my fingers right here and do this sort of adjustment, because if I start really racking focus like this and I move my hand, it's easy for your fingers to kind of get in the way of the rangefinder window there. So you're not going to be able to clearly see with the rangefinder if you're doing that. So you have to do a lot of these kind of small adjustments like this. Whereas if there was a tab, it would just be easy to quickly pull focus from infinity to close focus. That's a nitpick thing in my opinion, but I just really prefer rangefinder lenses that do have that for that reason. And the size of the lens, like I mentioned, it's not a huge lens by any means, but for an M camera, for a 35mm lens, something I'm just going to kind of always have on my camera and carry around with me, it does make the camera a little front heavy, and it's just kind of a long lens. If you're adapting this lens to a mirrorless camera or something, and that's another good way of taking advantage of the close focusing because you're always going to be using an EVF. On most mirrorless cameras, this is going to be perfectly manageable, but on an M camera, when I can use a 35 f2 lens that's way smaller than this, I tend to value the size of that over, any kind of added benefit of having an apochromatic design like this, which I would assume plays a big part in the actual size of the lens itself, just the lens design. But it's a little bit big and kind of front heavy for me. And again, that's with no lens hood attached. You can attach a lens hood with this bayonet system up here on the front. Without the hood, you have the bayonet mount itself, which kind of has these like sharp edges to it. I also think it would look better if this was in black and not silver. Again, we're getting way into the nitpicky stuff here and just personal preference, really. The size, the design of the actual lens itself, not having a focus tab, just being a little bit longer and heavier than I would personally like for an everyday lens. All of that stuff aside, just based on the image quality alone, this is probably one of the best 35mm f2 lenses I've ever used. And some people might prefer the size and weight of this lens, and you might prefer not having a focus tab. That really does, I think, come down to personal preference. But if you're looking for a solid 35 f2 and you want to save some money and not get the Summicron, this is a very good option. It reminds me a little bit of the Zeiss 35 f2 Biogon, which I had a long time ago. It was a little bit of a longer lens as well, but all in all, for a 35mm f2 lens, again, image quality being the focus there, I think this is a really good option. If you're interested in checking this lens out, I'll have links down below to today's sponsor, KEH Camera. You can also use the links and codes down below to not only support the channel, but also save you a little bit of money as well. While they've been a sponsor here on the channel for years now, I've been recommending KEH Camera since before I even started a YouTube channel. They've been in business for over 40 years, buying, selling, and trading used photography equipment. Whether it's camera bodies, lenses, digital, or film, their inventory is massive and it's being updated every single day. They have a pretty strict grading scale as well, so you know what kind of condition your gear is going to be in when you buy it. But on top of that, they also have a free 180-day warranty and a 21-day return policy included with your purchase. And if you're not purchasing any gear, but you'd like to trade in or sell some of your gear, you can do that directly to KEH Camera. You can schedule a video chat with one of their buyers to go over the gear that you have, and they'll even schedule a pickup for your gear so you don't have to leave the house or worry about shipping. Anytime you're shopping with KEH, whether you're buying gear or selling gear, make sure you use the links and the codes down below. The codes are going to help you save a little bit of money or get a bonus on your quote if you do decide to sell, but just shopping through these links here alone, it goes a long way at supporting the channel at no extra cost to you. So thank you again to KEH Camera for sponsoring this video. That's going to do it for this video on the 35 f2 APO-Lanthar from Voigtlander. Really, really nice lens. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions about this lens, let me know. We're going to continue doing videos like this where it's a little bit shorter, just sort of quick looks at different lenses for the M mount system. I've been curious of trying new and old lenses on the M system, especially the M11, utilizing the full resolution of the 60 megapixels there. You can really see how well some of these lenses hold up, and I think a lot of us will be surprised at how well they do. So if you have any questions, again, let me know in the comments down below. But that's it for today. So thank you all for watching. I love you guys. I'll see you soon.